and the calculator. Okay, this is just a side one in case you're struggling with using your calculator to find trig functions. First off, on tests and quizzes, when you're allowed to use a calculator, it will be the TI-84 Plus that we have in the back of the room. You won't be able to use the Desmos calculator on your phone during tests and quizzes. You can use the Desmos calculator on the SOL, but the SOL doesn't really have any trig. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and look at using your calculator. Sine, cosine, and tangent are pretty straightforward. The main thing you have to know is which mode are you in. So if I look at cosine 2 pi over 5, 3 pi over 7, 5 pi over 7, there's no degree symbol. So that must mean that I'm going to take my calculator, and I'll put it right over here. Move this guy out of the way. And I'm going to turn the calculator on and clear it out. And I'm going to want to go to mode and make sure that I'm in radians. I'm in radians. Now, as soon as I'm in radians, if all I want is sine, cosine, sine, or tangent, I simply do cosine 2, and then use the pi button. Pi is right here above, oops, sorry. Is right above the up arrow. Small enough I can't quite see. I keep doing the wrong one. Second, and up arrow. There we go. 2 pi divided by 5. You don't have to put the closing parenthesis if it's just a single thing, just a single entry like that, and you will get the answer in decimal form. Again, sine, you would do sine of 3 pi divided by 7, and you hit enter. Tangent is just tangent of 5, much easier to do this when you can just push buttons, divided by 7, and you hit enter. Now, that's sine, cosine, tangent. They're straightforward. But what happens if you want secant, cosecant, or cotangent? That becomes a little more difficult. Here, you have to recall that, move this guy over here, you have to recall that secant is equal to 1 over the cosine of 2 pi over 5. It's not equal to the cosine of 5 over 2 pi. It's not the reciprocal of the angle, it's the reciprocal of the function. So when you rewrite it like this, it should be obvious that you're doing 1 divided by cosine 2 pi over 5. So to bring back our little calculator here, if I wanted to do this, I would simply do 1 divided by cosine 2 pi divided by 5. Okay, so now I'm going to have 1 divided by the cosine of this, and I will get the answer for the secant. The cosecant, remember everything has one and only one co, so this is equal to 1 divided by the sine of 2 pi over 9, which is the same thing as 1 divided by sine 2 pi over 9. Do not get confused with the little negative ones up there. The negative ones on a function do not mean reciprocal, they mean inverse. We're going to talk about inverses in our next trig unit. So again, bringing back my handy dandy calculator, I would do 1 divided by sine, and then I would do, okay, we'll do the pi first and then the 2, divided by 9, and there's your answer. Cotangent, likewise, I would need to do 1 divided by the tangent of pi over 13. Okay, if you need to, you can pause the video, check. Try these on your calculator. Get used to that muscle memory. That's important. Okay, so this is going to be 1 over the tangent of pi over 13, or 1 divided by tangent pi over 13. But now what happens if, oh, you're in degrees? Change your mode. That's all. Go to your calculator. There's a mode button right here. Okay? You click on mode. You're going to arrow down to where it says radian. You're going to arrow over so that it's flashing on degree. You're going to move your recording. And you're going to press enter. Now your calculator is in degree mode. So now you can simply do cosine of 27 degrees and hit enter. 0.891. The sine of 312 degrees. That's negative 0.743. One on and on. Typically, I'll ask you to round to 2 or 3 decimal places. Tangent is 50. Tangent of 53 degrees. Okay? Now, what about secant, cosecant, and cotangent? Again, remember, this is not the cosine of 1/25. This is 1. All right, I love having to move this guy all the time. 1 divided by the cosine of 25 degrees. This next one is 1 divided by the sine of 92 degrees. And the last one here is 1 divided by the tangent of 13 degrees. Now, just to make sure that you get all those right, I'm going to put those in the calculator so you can double check, and you can also do it with me. So the secant of 25 degrees is 1 divided by the cosine of 25 degrees. The cosecant, its reciprocal is sine, so that's going to be 1 divided by sine of 92 degrees, and that's 1.0006 or 1.001. And then tangent or cotangent of 13 degrees will be 1 divided by the tangent of 13 degrees. Okay? Now, these particular 6 trig functions and their reciprocals, you're responsible for knowing the reciprocals. You are responsible for knowing that sine can be rewritten as 1 over cosecant, or cosecant can be written as 1 over sine. You've got to be able to go back and forth between these. Now, trig functions on the calculator. Okay? Only 3 primary functions have keys. Rewrite reciprocal functions as 1 divided by one of those primaries. Use the calculator and enter 1 divided by primary trig function, followed by the degrees or radians. Be sure you're in the correct mode. Okay? Now, if you are using Desmos on anything or at home, okay, let's say you don't have a graphing calculator, which you really should, because that's what you're going to use on your not your SOLs. It's what you're going to use on your SATs and ACTs. Okay, things like that, your college entrance exams. But if you've got to retake or take the geometry SOL, etc., notice that going to Desmos, you can click, okay, you can click right here on the bring up my keypad. When you bring up the keypad, it brings up X, Y, all this kind of crazy stuff, your numbers. Over here, you've got a functions button. If you click on the functions button, it brings up trig, stats, distributions, and miscellaneous. If you're doing trig, you click on trig. Notice that you've got sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent. You've got all the inverses. And we're not going to worry about the ones with the H's right now. Now, the nice thing about Desmos is you don't ever have to do the 1 divided by. If I want the cosecant of 2 pi over 5, I will just click on cosecant and then put in 2 pi over 5. And remember, here's your pi. Okay? So Desmos is a little bit nicer in that you don't need to remember the conversion. But most of the time, you're just not going to have access to Desmos on tests and quizzes. So you do need to get used to being able to use the calculator. That's it for evaluating trig functions with a calculator and or Desmos.